Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Shawn. I'm the technical evangelist here at CTC, and today I get to give you a comprehensive introduction to the best free tools in the Revit Express tools. So let's talk about what's going to be covered today. I mean, CTC Software, we feel that we're pretty much an industry leader in these building productivity tools for Revit, for Civil 3D. We do a lot of custom programming. And we have a lot of tools and offerings focused for everybody, everyday users, CAD BIM managers, everybody in between. Now, you might want all these tools. And I have a lot of clients who call me up. We do demonstrations for them, and they get super excited. And once in a while, there's a little bit of difficulty getting management to actually commit to purchase them. They've tried the trials, they love them, but there's just a problem. And so maybe what you want to do is you want to just see what can you get for free. And that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the free tools that come along with the Revit Express tools from each of the suites and how even the free tools can give you still a huge value. So we're going to demonstrate those tools. We're going to go through a couple of major points here. Understand what the target audience for each of the suites is. That's important to know because you don't necessarily want every single tool getting in the hands of every person. And we'll explain a little bit about why that is. So we'll take a look at who the target audiences are. We'll look at how you can identify exactly what the free tools are and what they can do for you in your workflows. And then at the very end, we're going to take a look at, well, how you can get your hands on the suites. So real quick, introduction to a portion of our collection of tools here at CTC. On the left-hand side, all these tools in green, these are the Revit BIM Project Suite over here. The tools in blue are the BIM Manager Suite, and the tools in purple are the Batch Suite. And these are the suites that actually have free tools available on them. And so these are the three suites we'll be talking about today. Now, since I'm not a huge fan of death by PowerPoint, I'm going to jump directly into Revit, and we're going to go live in the software and take a look at these tools in the Revit environment directly. So inside of Revit, there are the three suites. I just mentioned them. Project, Batch, and Manager. And the suites themselves, Project Suite, is really designed for everybody. Batch Suite is kind of designed for that semi-experienced user, maybe those who are responsible for a little bit of minor project maintenance on your own projects. And then the Manager Suite down here is designed for exclusively BIM managers. Now, there are some tools here in the free tools that users who aren't BIM managers might want to use, and that's fine. But just understand that the intent of these suites is for that group of people. Project for everybody, Batch Suite for someone who's got a little bit of experience in Revit, and Manager for BIM managers. Okay, how do you identify free tools versus licensed tools? Well, if you've downloaded one of these suites already and installed it and you've run out of your trial, you probably notice that these dark colored icons over here won't run after the trial if you don't have a full license. These are the ones that actually require licensing, the darker colored icons. On all three suites, that's the case. The light colored icons over here, these are the tools that we're going to focus on today, the ones to the far left. These are the tools that are free and will continue to work forever. So if you download today and install today, all tools will work for 14 days, and then after the 14 days, the light colored icons just keep working. So let's take a look at some of what these tools can do. And what I want to do is start with like the tools that really are designed for everybody. And then I'm going to go into kind of the middle ground tools a little bit. And I'll talk about some licensed, I'm not going to show, but I'm going to talk about a couple of licensed tools that might pair well with some of these. But obviously, if you're not getting full licenses, then you might not be able to use those. So I don't want to focus on those too much. And then finally down here, I'm going to talk about the Manager Suite and the free tools on that suite. So I'm going to pull these back up to the ribbon here, stack them up in the order that you would see them. Let me get these all pulled up here. And one thing I didn't point out was that I am on the CTC Software tab. So when you install these tools, trial or fully licensed, you'll find them on the CTC Software tab. Like I said, I'm going to start over here on Project Suite and talk a bit about the free tools here. Everybody seems to have a bit of a problem in our firms with people finding the right content. If you're looking for a free solution for content management, BIMless Browser can't be passed up. Now, if you're going to spend a little bit of money on content management, if you're going to invest in it and get an even better solution, I would recommend Hive. But if you can't get management to commit to buying something, BIM List is still a very quality tool, and both the admin interface and the browser are free. You don't have to have a license to use these tools, and you can even distribute these databases around to multiple people by hand. Just push them out with a script, with a jump drive. You can use this in a firm on a network without needing to pay for anything. It's not the most ideal configuration, but it's a free tool, so you still get quite a bit of power. Now, what does BIM List do for you? Well, if I open up BIM List, the whole purpose of this tool, first of all, I'm going to anchor it over here to the right on top of my properties window. You can see that at the bottom, I've got properties and I've got BIM List browser. The BIM List environment over here from the admin interface lets me create databases of content. Now, if you're going to use BIM List, I recommend probably separating them out by version, maybe by discipline in your firms, probably have detailing be its own separate database. These databases can't be super huge, maybe about 1,500 entries at about the most. Then you're going to start seeing it slow down a bit. But up to about 1,500 entries, that could pretty easily handle a discipline of content for a year, a version year. So if I was to go to Revit 2018 here, my architectural 18 set, what you might notice is I've got some groups inside of there. Those, again, have been configured by the BIM List admin side, which is, again, free. So I can go into these different groups like my model group, and I can start to navigate through the tabs also that have been configured from BIM List admin, and I can start to find out what it is I want to drop into my project. So I can say, hey, I'm looking for some interior doors, and I can find some things here and drop them in. You can even expand out the door families and find the individual types. You can expand them out and see their parameter values before you even drop these components live into your project. This can handle system families. This can also, so I'm doing model components here, loadable RFAs, but it can also do system families where I can have things like schedules and details and system families in the mix, like wall types and floor types. You can have these at your fingertips and able to be drugged directly into a Revit project and load it just by drag and drop or double click. You can bring them in. So this is a real quality way for a free tool to be able to bring content into your Revit environment. A couple of limitations again. It's not perfectly straightforward to share this across multiple computers. You can, it's not super straightforward. If you want to know about it, I'll be more than happy to tell you how to do that later on. It can only handle Revit content. This doesn't consume things like PDFs. You couldn't put your standards in here and have people navigate through your standards library and open that up. That's what Hive can do. There's no real rights control on this. You can't control who can and who cannot necessarily edit this content. You can't stop people from opening up the original files, right? So there's some limitations, but for a free tool, still, I mean, this is really powerful. The ability to, in less than a morning, set up your library in here and make it all searchable. That's great. And I can search. I can literally search right here. If I was to go, just go back to, let's say, my model group and search for something like single, this will start to go through and find me anything that matches single casework, single doors exterior, single doors interior, other types of single components inside of there. All of this can be pulled up just with a simple, quick search. Super simple and super valuable. That's a little bit of content management. Again, free tools there for everyday Revit users to be able to navigate the content library without needing to go load family and try and load a bunch of stuff in. This can be a great tool set. Another fantastic tool set here in this project suite that offers a ton of value right away is renumbering. This is probably one of my favorite free tools for everyday Revit users. Personally, I use this all the time. Even with the license suite, I use renumbering 100% of the time when I'm doing production. Because a lot of the time, I get put on sheet assembly because I'm quick at it, because I got renumbering ready to go. I've got other tools I can use for that to help me with it as well, but renumbering is just a powerful tool. Let me explain why it's so powerful for sheets specifically. It can, by the way, also help you renumber rooms and doors and anything that uses the mark parameter value, but let's talk about sheets here. So I often go to sheets initially before we do some of our early prints, and I notice that looking at these detail numbers, things are kind of in kind of a squirrely order here. Stuff maybe just got thrown on the sheet and organized later after the fact, And now that I want to go in here and start organizing this, I have to click these detail numbers and start getting them sorted, right? I want to put detail 1 here at the top right corner. But the problem in Revit is that detail numbers on sheets must be unique. It tells you that. You can't even continue. You have to cancel out. You can't hit OK. You have to cancel out because that has to be a unique number. So when you're on a sheet like this, you have to look around, find detail 1, make it something else, come back and number this, and then do the same thing for the next detail. If I want it to go 1, 2, 3 down vertically, top to bottom, then I have to go find detail 2, which is over here, and make it something else, and then number this guy. So you're basically numbering each view multiple times, and that kind of isn't the most efficient way to work in all cases. So this is what I would prefer to do. I just zoom out, and I look at the sheet as an overall environment here. I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what I want to do. In fact, I probably should put this one up on top there, but we'll just leave it as it is for now. Just vertically, 1, 2, 3, straight down, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to call up renumbering, and I'm specifically, in my case, going to go to the Detail Numbers tab. Now, remember what I just said a moment ago, rooms, doors, and actually I missed grid lines, but grid lines can be numbered. Anything that uses mark can be numbered, but I'm going to use detail numbering right now. I'm going to start my sequence with number 1. If I was going to do like an A column and go A1, 2, 3, and then come back and do B1, 2, 3, you could do that as well. I could prefix with A or B or C and use that as part of my numbering schema as well. In this case, I'm just going to use straight integers. So 1. And I'm also going to tell it, in case it finds a detail 1 on my sheet someplace, to automatically swap it to something else. Just make it something else so I don't have to worry about doing this whole renumbering dance on my sheet, because that just frustrates me. So I'm going to click renumber. And I'm going to come over here and just start clicking through my views. I don't have to even pay super close attention. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that's it. And I'm done. And I've renumbered my sheet in this case. So I can zoom in over here and I see, if I look closely enough, 1, 2, 3 going vertically at the very bottom there, and then 4, 5, 6 going up, and 7 over here at the far left. And I'm done. That was simple. I mean, just clicking through views. If you've got 20, 30 details, small details on sheets, and you need to go through and renumber all of those, man, this can save so much headache and frustration and time, especially when you're minutes from printing. If you need to do this, you just call up this free renumbering tool, go to detail numbers and tell it how to start and what to do, and renumber and just start clicking through. Similarly, for those of you in architecture, and actually even in spaces, I believe this will work for spaces also, you can have this renumber rooms. So if and or when clients call you up and go, well, I want to use this certain kind of a numbering schema. You may already have numbers on your rooms, or maybe you weren't paying super close attention to the numbering as you were doing your preliminary design, but now you need to go back and renumber those. I can prefix with certain areas of buildings if I care to, start my numbering schema with whatever, suffix them with A, B, C, D if I care to, and again, make sure that I have unique room numbers throughout my project, and just by renumbering, I can click sequentially through my building and have it number those. And then coming back to the doors themselves, I can use room-based numbering on the doors and have it understand how to auto-suffix things for A, B, and C doors, or 0.1, 2, 3 doors in rooms when there's multiple doors in the same space or room. So this can be a great little tool set there. Again, it's free. Renumbering is free. And the last one that I want to talk about here on the project suite is the one called QuickSelect. QuickSelect is another great tool. I use this a lot, especially when I'm in my code plans. This is where I personally use this the most. When I'm in life safety plans or code plans, if I'm trying to go through and look at my fire-rated walls inside of here and figure out what's going on, and actually, because I know I can't see them in this view, I'm going to go to my main floor plan, my general floor plan over here. What I want to see in this view specifically is all walls that are fire-rated in any form or fashion, and I want to see any walls that are not attached to the level above properly, that have some kind of an offset, because I know that I need to somehow handle what's going on with the ceiling conditions in that case. If it's going to be a fire-rated wall, I need to make sure that I'm handling this stuff properly. So I'm going to use QuickSelect to go through and just find all fire-rated walls that do not attach to the level above in this view. I don't care about the rest of my project right now. I'm just looking at this particular view here. I'm going to pull this off to the side so we can see the main part of the floor plan. Tell it that I want to look in my active view exclusively. I'm going to look at the category here, specifically walls. So I'm going to drop this list down and just go directly to walls here, right there. Now, the filter properties are going to let me pick up on any parameter and parameter value of walls, or whatever category I've chosen. It doesn't care if it's a shared parameter or not. In a lot of cases, this even lets me go ahead and select parameters that are not available for scheduling because I get everything here. Now, the one that I'm looking for is fire rating. This happens to be a type parameter. It actually tells me if it's instance or type. And I'm looking for anything whose operator equals something, or maybe is not empty, or things like that. In this case, I'm going to do equals some value, or contains HR, right? Or is greater than 1, or something like that, right? I only happen to have 1 hour fire rated walls in this plan because I was lazy and didn't do all the fire rating yet. But I'm going to select all those walls. In fact, I'm going to build a brand new selection set with this in case I happen to have anything else selected. I don't think I do, but just in case, I'm going to update my selection with any walls that have a 1 hour fire rating in my active view. And so all of these walls now get highlighted. On the right-hand side, I can actually take a look at the selection set. I can see the individual types of walls and how many of them there are. Oddly enough, I happen to have tile walls inside of here that are fire rated, and they probably shouldn't be. So I'm going to handle that a little later on. But my next thing that I want to do is I want to remove from this selection any of these fire rated walls that do properly attach to the level above. So I'm going to go in here and change this parameter that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look for, let's see, I think it's going to be top constraint is probably the one that I want to look at. Yeah, top constraint right there. And if the top constraint equals level 2, then I want to get rid of it. So I'm going to remove that from my selection set if it equals level 2. This is just kind of a generic example here, but I'm going to click update. And this is going to leave me with a bunch of walls. In fact, all of my tile walls, which are just partial height tile finish components down here in the restroom, none of those attach at a level above because they're just going, you know, partial height in that restroom facility. And then over here, I'm noticing that there's 2 B5-inch walls. These are, you know, basic interior partitions. And I happen to know this office space. Oddly enough, none of these walls should be fire rated because these are open-topped walls. There's no ceiling above this. It's just an open floor plan over here. So I don't know why these are even marked as fire rated. That's kind of silly. They're probably misclassified walls. Someone wasn't paying attention. But I can find that kind of stuff out very quickly without needing to cut sections and make sure that I got right stuff in right places. But, you know, I know that this is a problem. And I was able to select that based on the properties. You say, well, how would I have done it elsewise in Revit? Well, I suppose you could have made a schedule and filtered the schedule down doing something like this as well. But then you had to make another view and know how to use Revit schedules and filters. Here in this case, I can just do this on demand. I don't have to make a view and then probably clean up, hopefully clean up after myself after the fact. So QuickSelect, really powerful tool for finding things. Maybe you want to find all the ductwork in your model that is at 9 foot and is 12 inches tall, all right, or 12 inches high. You can ask the model for that information and it'll give it back to you. Anything that you can think about, if you can find its properties and you can look at its properties over here in the properties window or type properties, QuickSelect will help you select the objects based on those exact properties, which can be really powerful. So that's 3 major tools on the project suite that can be huge time savers. BIM list for content management, renumbering to, well, do renumbering, and QuickSelect to very easily select things. Quick recap in Revit, just since I was talking QuickSelect, the default way in Revit of filtering stuff, you can select a bunch of objects and use filter, but you can only go down to the category level here, like walls in this case. That's it. That's the best filtration Revit has built in, unless, again, you do that scheduling thing and build a schedule. A lot of people don't like to do that or don't know how to do that. So again, that's where the CTC software can come into play, and you can leverage the QuickSelect option there. Let's go take a look at another thing that maybe a project coordinator might want to do. Maybe a project coordinator in this model, as it's halfway through its life cycle, wants to take a number of families from this model and save them out. Because maybe you want to go edit them somehow. Maybe they're not quite configured correctly, so you want to save them out of the model to a known directory, fix them, and then you're going to turn back around a little later on and load them back in. Well, how would you do that? In Revit natively, you can go down to your families category down here, families section in the project browser. And from families, you can right-click on it directly and choose to save. But there's a problem with this. This will indiscriminately save every single component family out of your Revit model to one unorganized directory. It won't make any subfolders. It just saves every family indiscriminately to one location wherever you tell it to go, which could be okay. But usually you don't want every family. Usually you want 1 or 2 or 5 or a few things from a certain category. It would be nice if I could right-click, say, on doors and save out just doors, or save out just mechanical equipment or specialty equipment, but you can't do that in Revit. You can't click a category. You can only go to the doors themselves, but you can't select multiples. You can only do it one at a time if you want to be a bit discerning here, right? And when I save this out, it's going to want to try to save back to whichever directory it was loaded from in the first place. And I may not want that. I don't want to overwrite something maybe on my network. I want to save it to my project directory perhaps, or to a different location so I can do some custom repair on it without overwriting something. And I have to do that one by one by one. That's not super efficient. So if I jump over here to the Batch Suite, I can go into the Family Exporter. This is a free tool in the Batch Suite. And from here, what I can do once it's opened up is tell this explicitly what I want. I like organizing this by category personally. That's the way I prefer to look at this content. So it actually gives me the Revit category list just like it does in the Families browser over here. And I can start expanding things out and saying, well, give me these things right here. Give me these 5 doors. Or I can scroll down at the same time and say, also give me all mechanical equipment and specialty equipment. Maybe give me just a handful of these windows down here. I can choose these options. And when I've made those choices, I can tell it exactly where I want it to go. In my case, it would go to my desktop to an exported content folder. It would save out 35 families. And then when it's saving these families out to the exported content folder, it's also going to create for me down here some subfolders automatically. Geometry as a first folder and category as a second folder. Now, what's geometry mean? Well, let's say I was over here and I was grabbing title blocks and view titles, and I want to save them out as well. Well, they're going to get put into an annotation geometric folder versus the model folder that Windows and Doors would get put in, just like how Revit organizes its default out-of-the-box library. And then under that, it's going to build me categorical folders. So I'll get Windows folder and a View Titles folder in their proper subcategory of geometry here. And then it'll save the families out. So I don't have to sit here and babysit this. I can just click Export, go fill up my coffee, and when I get back, it'll be ready to go. And I can then start doing whatever edits to these families I wanted. Now, when I'm done with those edits, when I'm done editing those families, I might want to turn around and load them back into a project or possibly even a couple of projects, Revit models. So for that, you can use this tool here, the Family Loader. I use this a lot when I'm working with a nested family that I know that I'm going to be pushing into a couple of other host families. I'll use this tool. Or if I'm editing maybe some of my major company standard directory structure, and I know that there's a couple of active projects and I want them to have the latest and greatest version of the families, well, I'll select those families here that I want them to load back in, and I'll choose those destination projects and or families where I want that family loaded into it and tell it to load them. And the cool thing here is, if I had, let's say I had edited all 4,000 families in my current library, I did something to them. I updated them in some form or fashion. There are tools you can use to help automate that. Up here in the Manager Suite, there is a licensed tool called Family Processor that can help you with that task. I'm not going to show that tool because we're not talking as much about licensed tools today, but if you were to harvest a bunch of families or fix a whole bunch of families with Family Processor, then later on you might want to push those back into projects. But here's the trick of it, right? I would not want to take 4,000 families and push it into an active Revit model. That'd be a bad idea. So there's a cool little switch right here that says only reload families if they already existed. This way, I can guarantee I'm not pushing too much into files. It's only going to reload stuff that's already in there in the first place. So it refreshes it, it reloads it basically. You can choose, alternatively, if you wanted to push a certain number of families into all files. There are times when my clients are sitting there with a new title block and a couple of standard, graphic components they want to use on 5 or 6 different Revit models a part of the same project. They want them all to be done the same way. So they'll take that title block or that view title or whatever it is, and they'll just forcibly push it into all 5 projects, just telling it, load them, just doesn't matter, just load them, push them in. And it'll do that. Whenever you are actually doing this load process, if it is a central file or a work sharing enabled project, This will automatically create a new local copy for you, so you don't have to be working live in the central, which can cause problems if you do. So I always tell this to create new locals for me. I also tell it, especially if I'm reloading families, that I want to suppress the overwrite dialog box, because I don't like having that box pop up every 10 seconds telling me what, asking me which options I want to use. So I just tell it right now, overwrite the existing version, or forcibly update the parameter values and the existing version, whichever one is right. And then I tell it to suppress that box, and so it'll just load all the families in, and it'll ignore that box and just make that choice programmatically. Then I don't have to sit there and babysit it at all. And when it's all done, I can tell it to automatically save and eventually close those host files. And not just save, but if it's a work sharing enabled project, it'll also sync to central and relinquish elements, so anybody else now can continue working with that stuff. So I could potentially do this while people are working live on a project if I really wanted to. I probably wouldn't, but it's up to you. This is why this isn't necessarily tools that are designed for everyday Revit users who aren't necessarily familiar with the inner workings of Revit. They could make some choices that might not be the best. So I don't usually give this to everybody. Maybe somebody who has been using Revit for a couple of months or so. They might be able to understand and use these things properly. But that's two free tools there, Family Exporter and Family Loader on the Batch Suite, both of which can be great for harvesting and then republishing families back into projects and other families. Now, finally, we're going to get over here to the Manager Suite. There's a couple of tools here, two tools in particular that I'm going to talk about, Family Tools and Project Cleaner. Family Tools is what I'll kind of cover first. If you are doing a bunch of family editing, there's a few things you might want to do with your families. I know that I don't always clean up after myself after I'm done, editing a whole bunch of families, and end up with a lot of those .00 whatever files out there. And those are backup copies of Revit families. If people are not using some kind of content manager like this and they're browsing for families, the unfortunate thing is that the way that those files get organized in Windows is the oldest possible version of those families is listed first, and then it goes progressively up the chain, newer, and then the newest one, the actual family that people should be using, is on the bottom of the list. And if people aren't paying attention, they may accidentally load a very out-of-date version of your family, an old backup copy, because they are still RFAs and you can directly load them. So what I like to do is, as best as I can, clean up after myself. Well, in this case, I have a little tool here in Family Tools called Delete Backup Files. Simple thing. I can point it at an entire directory structure here. I'm going to refresh this list. So this might be my company standard whole folder of multiple versions of Revit or whatever. In this case, it finds every single backup file that's in that directory for both families and for projects. Finds all of it. And all I have to do is click Delete Selected Backup Files. Now, this doesn't throw them in your recycle bin. It truly deletes them. They're gone. So make sure you know what you're doing here. But, if you don't need your backups, clean them up. So I'm going to answer yes to this, and it'll run through, and it cleaned up 4 meg of space in this case on the hard drive, wherever that was stored. So it very quickly finds and cleans up after you those individual backups. Another thing this can do for you is work with type catalog files. So if you are dealing with CSVs, or maybe you're building your type catalogs in Excel like I like to do, so I can keep some formulas and some intelligence in that type catalog, I'll save it out as a CSV. But for Revit to understand a type catalog with families, it has to be a .txt file. So if I'm going to do a whole bunch of editing, if I'm like an MEP user and I'm building a whole bunch of MEP catalogs, type catalogs for families, then I may be saving out a whole bunch of CSVs, and using this, I can tell it to look for those CSVs and just quickly convert them over to .text files. And then my families will recognize them, and I can use that however I want. And tools like BIM List can actually understand and leverage those type catalogs as well. So it's beneficial for me to have them. This is also somewhat useful for shared parameters. Now, if you are going to go for the full licensed version of Manager Suite here, Shared Parameter Manager is far superior, but again, that has a cost. So there is some lightweight tools here that will allow you to compare two shared parameter files side by side. Ideally, in your firm, you would only have a single shared parameter file, not one per discipline or one per location, just one. That's the best you can possibly get. So what you can do is browse for other shared parameter files you might have, and have your shared parameter file 1 be perhaps your company's master, and then have 2 be some alternate file that was found someplace in your system that families might be referencing, and you can compare them. And it will show you unique group names between the 2 and unique parameters between them. Anything that's truly the same, exact named and GUID type parameters, it'll tell you that. It'll show you common groups and any conflicts you might run into where there might be parameters of the same name, but different GUIDs. And it'll tell you where they are, and then you can make some decisions as to how you want to handle that, how you're going to deal with that inside your library somehow. This doesn't help you automatically fix that. It just helps you identify where you might have some problems. Now, the merge portion here at the top, this will allow you to go through and basically combine 2 shared parameter files together. It doesn't let you be selective. It just says, here's one file, here's another, merge everything you possibly can from one to the other, and it'll just combine them together. It tries to match groups if it can. It tries to import groups if it needs to. It will report to you any conflicts where the parameter names are the same and it couldn't import them to create an invalid shared parameter file, but you could potentially merge your files together. And if you wanted to, you could also have it create a new shared parameter file called merged on the side and have it actually create a merged shared parameter save result. So you could do that if you really wanted to. Again, it's a free tool. It's not designed to be elegant. If you want super elegant, that's the shared parameter manager. That lets you actually get much better comparisons and selectively import certain parameters or rename parameters and fix things that way. But this is designed to be free, so you can do that task. And the last tab over here was one that I used just recently with a client. They were having some really weird issues in a project where they had some crazy crashing crop up. And so what we did, one of the things we thought to check was to look in the directory of all their content. So we looked at their entire folder of stuff. In this case, I've got my electrical productivity pack, a really old version of my electrical productivity pack here. And it finds all of the families in that folder and Revit project models as well, for that matter. And then you can click Detect Versions here at the bottom, and it will tell you the exact Revit version that was last used to save that family and file. And not just the Revit version, but the exact build date. So you could know which Revit build was used potentially to work with these files. Now this one here, I probably gave it, I don't know, 6,000 entries. It might take it a second, but it's going to run through. Oh, it didn't take very long at all. But I can basically sort this. Check this out. My old folder, I have to clean this up at some point, guys, obviously. But I have Revit Architecture 2012 content here. Hasn't been touched since 2011. March 9th of 2011 to be exact. Well, that's not true. That's the build date of Revit when this was actually last edited in. It may have been edited since then, but in that last build date. Right? And I can scroll down this entire list of content. I happen to have sorted this by the Revit version, so I can see exactly what other versions happen to be at play. And if I scroll up far enough here, you'll see that I've got Revit 2014 in this list, Revit 2015, and if I keep going down, you might notice on the build date over here that I've got some March 3rd build dates, and I've got some, whatever that is, 7/4 build dates right there. So July 4th, yeah. So I've got some July 4th build dates here from Revit. All the way down that list, I can see these different build dates. There's a number of these. So the original release, Web Update 1, Web Update 2, I can find these in this Revit list right away. And possibly, yeah, nope, that's what I got, 2015. That's the newest piece of content I have in this old folder. But that gives me some information. Here's an important note for you. If you directly loaded these families, especially those 2012 families, into a project, that's where that corruption I mentioned earlier came from. There was actually a family that I had found that hadn't been edited since Revit 2.1, way back in the early 2000s of Revit. And back then, if you just directly upgrade that family from Revit 2.1 into Revit 2017 or 2018 or 2019, I can almost guarantee you something crazy is going to happen. Families don't like that. It needed to be opened first with an audit, and I tried to find an older version of Revit first to open it with so I could step it forward a little bit, because something that was that old had just a little bit of an issue moving forward. There was enough technology changes in Revit that it caused a couple of problems. But I was able to figure that out with the version detector from the families that were on that company's network, just using this free tool. So you can understand some of the maintenance you may have to do. Again, this doesn't help you upgrade them. It just gives you some ideas of action plans you may want to take. The last tool that we're going to talk about in depth today is this one, the Project Cleaner. Again, BIM Manager tool here. This isn't one you would necessarily want to give to everybody because this could destroy a project in a hurry if you didn't use it correctly. But what this tool lets you do is go through and clean up stuff in the project that shouldn't necessarily be there. You can see I've actually got a kind of dark filled box here on the views tab, or the views option here on my views tab, because I've already selected some things inside of here that I wanted to get rid of. I need to get rid of that one because that one's actually in use now. I decided to use some things after I did this, oddly enough. So what I'm doing is I'm actually looking through the views of my project, and I actually, before I did this, I went into options, and I went to view organization and told it to show me views that are on sheets, or organize them based on sheets, and then by the view type. So it actually shows me these views inside of here based on what sheet they're on. So it shows me the sheet numbering. Down below, there's a whole bunch of these views that are not on a sheet. There's some of these views in this list that are not directly on a sheet, but they do have dependent views that are on sheets. And so it kind of categorizes them separately here, which is perfect. This means that everything that's not on a sheet here, I can pretty safely just get rid of it. Well, yeah, it's subjectively pretty safely get rid of it. Maybe they just haven't put it on a sheet yet. But what I do is I go through and look for things like working views or sections that are just numbered here, right? Section 2, there's a working section east-west. This one I might not actually get rid of because it looks like someone cared enough about that one to name it. But there's a lot of things in here that maybe I don't want. There's renderings that are saved directly to my project. I don't like that. I don't like when renderings are saved directly in the project. They should be an image, saved out as an image, and then linked back in. That's the best way to do it. There's also a whole bunch of floor plans inside of here that are all working floor plans. And so I went through and checked these boxes to get rid of those views. And I didn't have to go through the project browser and know where they were sorted in the project browser or change the project browser sorting so I could more easily see this. I'm just seeing the list of views directly here in my floor plans list. Some of these I'm choosing to keep also just because I know they're probably going to make it onto sheets later on. Well, maybe these presentation plans I wouldn't need to, but I can be intelligent about going through this list of views and cleaning things up. The ceiling plans, same thing. I've got a bunch of working views here. And I would let people know before I did this, by the way, but I could go through and clean this stuff up at some interval, letting people know that I'm getting rid of these kinds of views. 3D views. Look at how many 3D views exist in my project. Tons and tons of 3D views, and most of these aren't being used with few exceptions. There's some Navisworks views down here that I actually am using in my site export views that I'm using. But other than these, all of the rest of these can just be straight up deleted out of my project. And that can save you huge amounts of file size. When there's tons and tons of working views, especially those that have been duplicated with detailing, man, that can just be a huge sink for the file size of your project. There's other ways of using this as well. I use Project Cleaner whenever I'm receiving outside consultants models or outside architecture models. When I'm just going to link their model in for reference and I care about the model and maybe a handful of floor plan views, I really don't care about their details. I don't care about their schedules and their sheets and their section cuts and their elevations and all that stuff that has all kinds of annotation and extra detailing in it. I don't care about any of that. All I care about are the general floor plans. So what I would do if I was cleaning this up from a client's point of view, from an outside consultant's point of view, is I would take everything not on a sheet because I don't care about any of that garbage. All this stuff directly not on a sheet. Get rid of all of it. In fact, I'd probably just go up here to the top and grab all views, and then I would just remove the main floor plan sheets that I did want to keep. The main general floor plans here would be all I would care about. That would be it. So those are the ones I would keep, and I would just remove everything else. And I've actually seen projects go from like 300, 350, 400 meg and drop down to like the 20, 30, 40, 50 meg range. That's pretty big because when I'm linking that into my model, I don't have to load into memory all this other stuff. That makes my loading process super fast. So for a free tool, this Project Cleaner, when I'm receiving models from outside partners, this can be huge for me cleaning up some of the garbage that might be in there. At the same time, by the way, when I'm done doing all of this cleanup, whatever this is, I can also purge these models. So I can forcibly purge right from here. This trick, kicks off the native Revit purge command, but it makes me not have to go search from the Manage tab and try and find it. I can just do this deletion and then trigger purge, and then continue on with whatever my other cleanup processes happen to be. But I've seen projects really drop by easily 7 times, 6, 7 times in file size. You can also use this for your own personal use internally to clean up things like view templates here. You can go through and clean up different view templates that maybe you're not using, or as a project comes to a close, cleaning those up. You can clean up any kind of view filters, selection and parameter filters, cleaning up sheets. There's a lot of times when I'm sending models out of house myself, before I send it away, I delete all my sheets. If it's going to a contractor for reference only, I don't want them having my sheets and my details and my schedules. So I use this myself to very violently and very completely clean up my model, so all they get is what I want them to have. Sometimes I'll strip links out. I can use it to find and strip out some DWG links. And also there's those images again. I can use this to strip out those images, which probably would have gone away anyway when I deleted those renderings, but this is just another way of cleaning those images up. But this is a great tool to be able to use very quickly. And by the way, if you're getting models from outside consultants on a regular basis, and you're getting the same kinds of views over and over again, you can save your selections. So up here at the top, whatever I've done in this dialog, I can save that. So the next time I get their model, I can simply load up, client XYZ or partner XYZ's settings and strip that model clean and have this be done a lot faster the next time. So it's already quick, but I can make it even faster if I wanted to. And then I can have, ABC partners who's in the same team, maybe a different discipline. I can have their selection saved, and I can load their selection for their model and get that cleaned up as well. Hugely beneficial when you have to do this stuff on a repetitive basis. So we've talked about a whole bunch of tools, 2 or 3 tools per suite that are free that you can use on a regular basis, on a daily basis potentially, to save yourself tons and tons of time. Okay, so how can you get your hands on these suites? How do you go about getting them? Well, I'm going to open up Internet Explorer here. No, I'm going to open up Chrome actually, and I'm going to take and go to ctcsoftware.com. This is where you can find it, ctcsoftware.com. And if you go to the products listing right here, you can get access to the project, manager, and batch suites right through here. So if you don't already have them, go ahead and download them, right? You go to the project suite. When I go to this particular page, it's going to give me the ability to request a download, to try the suite free for 14 days. That try free for 14 days, once again, that's for the licensed tools. So if you're just thinking about the free tools, it's free forever for those because, well, they're free. But you go through this thing, you do a little registration, you give us your email, your name, your company name, whatever. We send you a link in an email. Make sure you check your spam folder just in case. But you get that link, and then you're able to go ahead and download this. And when you download it, you don't have to pick a Revit version. These tools automatically apply to Revit 2016 through 2019. There's one installer, and it auto applies to all 4 versions. So if you decide you want to roll these free tools out company-wide, you can do that. By the way, I'm not saying only use the free tools. My goal is to ultimately help you guys understand that the paid tools are also super valuable. Today's discussion is just about the free tools. So if you do want to actually buy this and get licensing for it, you can also, through that registration link, you'll probably get contacted by a salesperson, an account executive who will give you a call and say, hey, I see you've registered for such and such. And they might want to try and get you more information and help you be able to use the tools better. And if you wanted, get you some pricing on the tools themselves. You can see what the standalone cost is right here, $550 for the full license suite. But they can also help you understand about network licensing and site licensing, enterprise licensing, other types of licensing options. So certainly keep them in the loop. But this is how you can get it. Try it free, 14 days for the license stuff, free forever for those free tools we covered today. With that, I want to open this up for any questions. If you do have any questions, just throw them in the questions window. I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes and answer whatever questions happen to roll through. But if you don't have any questions, I want to thank you for the time you've given me today. Hopefully you've seen some tools, even the free tools, that can be really valuable for you in your firm for different user roles. So thank you again, and we do look forward to seeing you in future CTC webinars. So I see someone just raised their hand. They're going to be asking a question here in a minute. I'm going to hang out and actually keep an eye on that. So, oh, it was a thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, you guys. I'm just here to help make sure you get all the info that you need. So I'm glad this was informative for you, the one who just posted it in there. I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you. Any other questions? Keeping an eye out for that. I don't see anything else rolling through here. So with that, thank you again, and we'll see you in a future CTC webinar. Have a fantastic, oh, there was another one. Will this be posted online? Yes. This webinar was recorded, and as soon as it can get ripped down, it'll be put up to YouTube. So you'll see it on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the CTC Software channel yet, I would encourage you to do that. There's a lot of in-depth demonstrations of each individual tool, as well as workflows for some of those licensed tools as well, available there. So if you go to youtube.com and just search CTC Software, you should come across a lot of our demos. Then subscribe to that channel, and when this one gets loaded, if you hit the little bell, it'll actually let you know that when we upload new videos like these recorded webinars, in case you happen to miss one. All right, thank you all, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you in future webinars.